Hello, friends. It's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm bringing you episode 3 in our new series that we're doing, which is homemade versus store-bought foods. We're showing you how much money you save by cooking from scratch. In week 1, we saved $88 doing 3 simple projects, and in last week's video, it was another $73, which totals $161 a month that we're saving on our grocery costs by just doing these simple tasks. And if you want to see what we did in the last 2 episodes of this series, you can check out the link in the video description. So in this week's video, I'm going to bring you 4 more simple kitchen projects that you can do to save your family money, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We are a family that cannot have dairy because my oldest son has an anaphylactic allergy. He has them to dairy and peanuts, but we cannot purchase milk in the store. We have to drink dairy alternatives like different nut milks, almond milk, cashew milk. And so the first project I'm going to show you is how we save money by making it ourselves because it can be very expensive. So the cheapest way that I have found to make nut milk is to use cashew pieces. The pieces are cheaper than the whole nuts, and I can get them for 25 pounds for $110 from Azure Standard. It works out to about $4.40 a pound, and that's for organic cashew pieces. So each half-gallon batch of milk I make, I typically use 2 cups of nuts, whether it's almonds or cashews or whatever. It'll be about 2 cups. So 2 cups of these cashew pieces works out to be $2.67. I just pour those nuts in the jar and soak them overnight in water so that the next morning we can begin making our milk. And so then we just blend them up, and then it makes our cashew milk. Now, store-bought cashew or almond milks have a lot of emulsifiers and other additives and preservatives to them, and they're a little bit more expensive. So this batch cost me $2.67 in cashews to make it. But if I bought almond milk from Aldi, the organic almond milk that I like to get, it would be $3.75 for the equivalent amount of milk. So I'm saving $1.08 per half gallon of cashew milk that I make. I make this 3 times a week, so that saves me almost $13 a month. It's $12.96 to be exact. Now, the beautiful thing about making the milk myself is that I have all of the nut pulp, all of those cashew pieces that didn't get blended into the milk are left over. And so on top of that $1.08 in savings that I have, I now have the cashews to add to other foods. I often like to take that nut pulp and put it in baked goods like energy bites, or sometimes I'll turn that cashew pulp into something like a cashew cream cheese if I add things like nutritional yeast and salt and things. But otherwise, we just use this cashew milk like you would use almond milk or a dairy-based milk in recipes. Any recipe that we're baking that calls for milk, we will use a cup of this. Anybody who's a coffee drinker that likes to put milk in their coffee, they'll use it for that purpose. So overall, this is a great way to save money for our family. On top of saving money, it's just a whole lot healthier to make a lot of the foods that we're going to make in this video from scratch yourself. I'm mostly in this series focusing on the financial benefits of cooking from scratch or canning foods, but we're not even really going to touch on the nutritional benefits, which are very important as well. And maybe I'll do another video series in the future where we focus on how much healthier it is to make things from scratch versus purchasing them in the store. You're avoiding all those additives and often the seed oils and other questionable ingredients, corn syrup and food dyes and things like that if you make it from scratch. And that's really important to me when I'm feeding my family. And so that's just another added benefit on top of the financial savings. Let's move on to our next project that's going to save us money. Canning is something that I do because it saves a lot of money, especially if we're growing the produce that's going into the jars or the meat that's going into the jars here on our homestead. Of course, it's going to cost less than if we had to purchase that produce. But this week, I want to bring you a canning project that you can do even if you don't have a garden or a homestead. And it's something that we love to do for meals. That's canning refried beans. And let me show you how you can save money doing that yourself. Now, just plain canned beans aren't always necessarily cheaper than what you can purchase in the store. You can sometimes find canned beans on sale for very cheap. But when you're doing something like a refried bean that has other ingredients in it, it definitely saves money when you do it yourself. So I can buy pinto beans from Azure Standard, organic pinto beans, 25 pounds for $37.32. That works out to about $1.49 a pound. And I'm putting a half a cup of those in each jar, so that's 37 cents of beans going in each of my pint jars. Now I'm going to add onions to my jars. I grow my own onions and they cost me 14 cents per onion start, and I'm only going to put a half an onion in each of my jars. So that's 7 cents of onion going into each pint jar. Now we're going to do some spices. I like to add cumin, oregano, salt, and we're going to do garlic cloves instead of garlic salt in these jars. So let's talk about the cost of all of those. And we're going to start with the cumin. I can get a pound of cumin from Azure Standard, also organic, for $15.05. We're only going to put a half a teaspoon of that cumin per jar, so that works out to 4 cents. Oregano, I can get a pound of it for $14.24, also organic. We're going to put a half a teaspoon of that in each jar, and that works out to approximately 1 cent of oregano going in each of these jars. We're going to do salt. I've talked in the previous videos in this series about the cost of salt. A half a teaspoon is less than a cent, but we'll just say a cent per jar just to simplify things. And then I'm going to add garlic to my jars. We'll do approximately 1 clove per jar. And when I grow my garlic, it works out to be about 4 cents per garlic clove. Now I'm adding, you can see right here, the drippings from a roast. This is just the leftover drippings in the bottom of a crock pot, as well as some bacon fat that I had in the fridge. These are all free. They're essentially waste products that a lot of people throw out after they cook a roast or cook bacon. So I'm not going to add the cost of that to the ingredients in my refried beans because I didn't have to pay for them and they were just kind of extras. So the only other cost that I have associated with canning these refried beans are the canning lids, and they work out to be about 30 cents each. So let's add all of that together. I have 37 cents in beans, 7 cents in onion, 4 cents in garlic, 4 cents in cumin, and a cent each in oregano and salt. And then we have our canning lid for 30 cents. Altogether, that is 84 cents for the ingredients that are in my refried beans. That's for a pint. And if you'd like a more detailed video, which is a tutorial on how to make and can refried beans, I'm going to link one in the video description for you. I'm not focusing on the how in this video series because I've done that many times over the last few years. I'm focusing more on the why we do this, and that's the cost savings. So 84 cents I have invested in each of these jars. If I were to purchase refried beans, let's say the old El Paso brand, it's $1.88 for a 16-ounce jar at my local Walmart. So I'm saving $1.04 per jar of refried beans that I can myself. Each batch of refried beans has 9 jars in it, so that's about $11.26 I save every time I can a batch of refried beans. Now, I typically use about 2 jars of these a month when I'm making burritos for my family. And so if I use 2 jars a month, I'm saving almost $2. It's $1.94. So $2 may not seem like a lot, but every bit counts, you guys. If we talk about all of the projects we've done so far and we're going to continue to do throughout the rest of this series, $2 here and there really does add up to a lot of money over the course of the month. Now, some might argue that the amount of time it took to can these beans isn't worth it to save $11.26 on this batch of refried beans, but I actually really love canning. It's a nice calming hobby of mine, and there is peace of mind knowing that the ingredients in these jars are a whole lot healthier than what I'm going to purchase in the store. And so when we want to use these, we'll just open a jar, fry them up and mash them up, and they'll make the most delicious burritos. We'll add some beef to them, and my family loves that for a quick lunch throughout the year. Now let's move on to the next project in this week's video, and that is making pancakes. So there are so many different ways that you can buy pancake ingredients from the store. You can buy pre-made mixes. You can purchase frozen pancakes that are already made. You can even have the liquid pourable batter. So it is really hard to compare cost savings, but we're going to try to nail that down here in the next project in this video. But I really do think that when you buy things like pancake mixes, you're paying a lot of extra money for what is essentially flour and a few ingredients mixed in. So it's a lot cheaper to just make that from scratch. So let's talk about my pancake recipe. I do 1.5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1.5 cups of water. You could do milk if you wanted to, but I do water. 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 2 tablespoons of oil. So let's get into the cost of all of those ingredients. I've gone over the cost of my flour that I purchased from Azure Standard before, and it works out to be 39 cents in this recipe for the 1.5 cups for a batch. I get my baking powder cheapest from Amazon. I can get an 8.1 ounce jar of the aluminum-free baking powder for $3.12. So it's 13 cents for what goes into a batch. My baking soda and salt are essentially free. It's negligible. For a half a teaspoon of baking soda or a half a teaspoon of salt, the cost when you break it down is less than a cent. So we're not even going to put a cost into this for that. Eggs, we raise our own eggs here from our hens in our laying flock, and so it's hard to nail down a price. I'm just going to go for what I see eggs costing in the store around me right now, and that's $2 a dozen. I use 2 eggs in this recipe, so that's going to be 33 cents per batch. And then vanilla extract, I calculated the cost of my homemade extract, and next time I make that for you, I'll break it all down for you. But 1 teaspoon of it is about 15 cents. And then I'm using olive oil, just regular olive oil in this recipe, 2 tablespoons of that at, I pay $18.98 for 101 fluid ounces. So that works out to be 19 cents of oil in a batch. And 1 batch of pancakes for me makes 12 pancakes, and it costs, if I add all of that up, $1.19 or approximately 10 cents per pancake. Now I have 9 kids, so I'm not doing 1 batch of pancakes. We're often doing a triple or quadruple batch to feed my hungry crew, but we're going to break down costs as if we're only doing 1 batch. And remember, that's 12 pancakes for 10 cents per pancake. So every pancake mix is different. Some might require you to add liquids, some you just add water, some you might have to add eggs or oil, and so I've taken that into account when I break this down. There are some really generic brand, store brand pancake mixes that might be cheaper than 10 cents per pancake. But if you're comparing quality ingredients, like an organic brand, Arrowhead Mills Organic would be 20 cents per pancake. Bob's Red Mill Organic is 22 cents per pancake. Even Bisquick that isn't organic, you're looking at 18 cents per pancake. So my 10 cents per pancake does save me money there. Now let's talk about things that aren't dry mixes. Let's talk about like frozen pancakes that you can just pull out of the freezer and warm up. I know a lot of people like to buy those for the convenience. Those work out to be about 25 cents per pancake. And something like a shake and pour, where all the liquid is already there for you and you just pour it onto the griddle, that is 31 cents per pancake. Now I'm doing a minimum of 3 batches of pancakes or 36 pancakes a week. So if I do that over the course of a month, I'm going to be saving anywhere between $6 to $32 a month on pancakes, depending on the type of item that I purchase in the store. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go on the low end and say we're saving about $10 a month on organic pancakes for my children, which every bit adds up. We're going to add that to our tally of grocery savings for the month. Now, the last project we're going to do is going to seem pretty obvious. It is homemade popcorn. Now, of course, making popcorn yourself is going to save you money, but have you ever broken down the math? Let's talk about it. So I buy organic popcorn like this from Azure Standard. I get 25 pounds for $40.46. 1 pound equals about 2 cups, which breaks down to about 81 cents a cup. And 1 cup of popcorn works out to be 8 quarts of popped popcorn. You're going to see that I added bacon fat to the bottom of my pan when I make my popcorn. So that doesn't cost me anything extra. Our lard or tallow or bacon fat is just a byproduct of the butchering process or the process of making bacon. So I'm not paying anything extra for oil or anything to cook my popcorn. So this works out to be 10 cents per quart when I make homemade popcorn like this. Now let's say I went to the store and I bought Pop Secret or Orville Redenbacher popcorn. Pop Secret is 30 cents a bag, which works out to be $1.20 for 8 quarts for the equivalent of what I made here. So I'm saving 39 cents per batch. Orville Redenbacher is 54 cents a bag. It works out to be $1.08 for 8 quarts, and I save 27 cents per batch. So I make at least 2 batches of popcorn a week, which works out to be about $2 to $3 a month I'm saving by making the popcorn myself and not buying microwavable popcorn. Now the real savings comes in if I avoid buying the big bags of popcorn. Something like Skinny Pop popcorn, 8 quarts of it would cost $5.41. So compared to my 81-cent homemade popcorn, I'm saving $4.66 per bag that would be purchased. That works out to $40.39 a month saved if I, made it at home versus buying the equivalent amount at the grocery store in those bags. But honestly, who's going to buy that many bags of that popcorn, right? If you had a family this size and you were buying Skinny Pop popcorn and spending, an extra $40.39 a month, that would not make sense. So we're just going to say on popcorn, we're going to make it the equivalent of microwavable bags and say that we save about $3 a month making our own popcorn this way versus buying the microwavable bags. So if we start adding everything up that we talked about in this week's video, we're saving $13 a month on almond milk, $2 a month on refried beans, $10 a month on pancake mix, and $3 a month on popcorn. That works out to $28 a month. And if I add that to our running list of everything that we've been saving throughout this series, we're now at $189 a month that we are saving on our grocery bill. And you guys, if that doesn't even convince you, think about a year. That's $2,268 a year just by doing 11 small tasks. Things like making your own salad dressing, popping your own popcorn, making your own mayonnaise, making fruit gummies for your children. And these aren't tasks that take you a whole lot of time. It really doesn't take that much extra time to whip up the ingredients for your pancakes versus pouring it out of a box that you purchase at the store. It's maybe an extra 5 minutes. And we all have that time in the morning, 5 minutes to save your family this type of money. And I would say, especially as a stay-at-home mom, that is my job, is to be as frugal as possible. If I'm not bringing in a paycheck, I'm trying to save the money that my family is bringing in through my husband's paycheck. So hopefully you're enjoying this series and you're learning some tips and tricks that can save your money on your grocery costs. If you're enjoying this, let me know, and I'm going to continue bringing you more projects in the future. There are plenty that we do, and I'm just kind of showing you what we do every week in the kitchen as the projects come about. So I hope you guys have a lovely week. We will be back next week with more friends. Until then, be blessed. Bye.